I don't really have to say it because luckily, ProPublica, with another banger of an article, has implicated Sam Alito in his ties to a billionaire, much like Clarence Thomas. So, Justice Samuel Alito took luxury fishing vacations with GOP billionaire who later had cases before the court. And the big part of this that they left out of the headline is, and didn't feel the need to report it. So, let's go take a look, shall we? In the years after the undisclosed trip to Alaska, Republican megadonor Paul Singer's hedge fund has repeatedly had business before the Supreme Court. Alito has never recused himself. And like, at the end of the day, what possible system could we have confidence in if this is allowed to stand? I'll say it now. Thomas, Alito, both of them ejected. They should be ejected by the court, from the court. In early July 2008, Samuel Alito stood on a riverbank in a remote corner of Alaska. Supreme Court Justice he was on vacation at a luxury fishing lodge that charged more than $1,000 a day. And after catching a king salmon nearly the size of his leg, Alito posed for a picture. To his left, a man stood beaming. Paul Singer, a hedge fund billionaire who has repeatedly asked the Supreme Court to rule in his favor in high-stakes business disputes. Goddamn, is that the face of a fat, wealthy billionaire? Fucking like the picture of anti-capitalist propaganda. Look at this fucker. Jesus. This fucking unit. Singer was more than a fellow angler. He flew Alito to Alaska on a private jet. If the justice chartered the plane himself, the cost would have exceeded $100,000 one way. And he had to come back, so that's quite a bit. In the years that followed, Singer's hedge fund came before the court at least 10 times in cases where his role was often covered by the legal press and mainstream media. In 2014, the court agreed to resolve a key issue in a decade-long battle between Singer's hedge fund and the nation of Argentina. Alito did not recuse himself from the case and voted with the 7-1 majority in Singer's favor. The hedge fund was ultimately paid $2.4 billion, ladies and gentlemen. Alito did not report the 2008 fishing trip on his annual financial disclosures. By failing to disclose the private jet flight Singer provided, Alito appears to have violated a federal law that requires justices to disclose most gifts according to ethics law experts. Experts said they could not identify any instance of a justice ruling on a case after receiving an expensive gift paid by one of the parties. Quote, if you were good friends, what were you doing ruling on the case? And if you weren't good friends, what were you doing accepting this? Referring to the flight on the private jet. Justices are almost entirely left to police themselves. And come on. I mean, come on. I think we all understand that this is what happens when you have a branch of our government. You know, you have the judicial branch that's just untouchable. Absolutely untouchable. It's ridiculous. Almost entirely left to police themselves on ethical issues with few restrictions on what gifts they can accept. When a potential conflict arises, the sole arbiter of whether the justice should step away from a case is the justice him or herself. ProPublica's investigations sheds new light on how luxury travel has given prominent political donors, including one who has had cases both before the Supreme Court, intimate access to the most powerful judges in the country. Another wealthy businessman provided expensive vacations to 2 members of the High Court, ProPublica found. On his Alaska trip, Alito stayed at a commercial fishing lodge owned by this businessman, who was also a major conservative donor. 3 years before, the same businessman flew Justice Antonin Scalia, may he rest in peace, who died in 2016, on a private jet to Alaska and paid the bill for his stay. Such trips would be unheard of for the vast majority of federal workers, who are generally barred from taking even modest gifts. Leonard Leo, the longtime leader of the Conservative Federalist Society, Dude, we need to do like a deep dive. Okay. So I'm thinking one of these days we're gonna do like a whole episode on the Federalist Society, and I want to do a whole episode on like the Red Summer, like just the entire, maybe not 3 hours, but definitely the entire 2 blocks, the first 2 blocks at least. Anyway, attended to help organize the Alaska fishing trip. Leo invited Singer to join, according to a person familiar with the trip, and asked Singer if he and Alito could fly on a billionaire's jet. Leo had recently played an important role in the justice's confirmation to the court. Singer and the lodge owner were both major donors to Leo's political groups. Christ above, man. ProPublica's examinations of Alito and Scalia's travel drew on trip planning emails, Alaska fishing licenses, and interviews with dozens of people, including private jet pilots, fishing guides, former high-level employees of both Singer and the lodge owner, and other guests on the trip. ProPublica sent Alito a list of detailed questions last week, and on Tuesday, the Supreme Court head spokeswoman told ProPublica that Alito would not be commenting. Several hours later, the Wall Street Journal published an op-ed by Alito responding to ProPublica's questions about the trip. Alito said that when Singer's companies came before the court, the justice was unaware of the billionaire's connections to the case. Oh yeah, I didn't know this. We just went fishing together. Come on, guys. I just went fishing with the man. And he paid for like my 1,000-day like stay at the lodge and travel and a lot of other stuff. But come on. How would I know that this billionaire is the owner of a $1 billion corporation that was before my court? How would I know that? How could I have ever known that? He never mentioned. He never brought it up. Totally. Alito said that he was invited to fly on the plane shortly before the trip and that the seat, quote, would have otherwise been vacant. He defended his failure to report the trip to the public, writing that justices, quote, commonly interpret the disclosure requirements to not include, quote, accommodations and transportation for social events. Oh, well, that's convenient now, isn't it? In a statement, a spokesperson for Singer told ProPublica that Singer didn't organize the trip and that he wasn't aware Alito would be attending when he accepted the invitation. Singer, quote, never discussed his business interests with the justice, the spokesperson said, adding that at the time, neither Singer nor his companies had, quote, any pending matters before the Supreme Court, nor could Mr. Singer have anticipated in 2008 that a subsequent matter would arise that would merit the Supreme Court's review. Totally. Not, look, we would have never guessed this. We had no inkling that it would ever be useful to be close friends with a Supreme Court justice that maybe one day we might be standing in front of. Leo did not respond to the questions about the organizing the trip, but said in a statement that, quote, would never presume to tell Alito and Scalia what to do. Like, guys, come the fuck on. This spring, ProPublica reported that Justice Clarence Thomas received decades of luxury travel from another Republican megadonor, Dallas real estate magnate Harlan Crow. In a statement, Thomas defended the undisclosed trip, saying unnamed colleagues advised him that he didn't need to report such gifts to the public. Oh, well, okay, if your homies told you not to. Crow also gave Thomas money in an undisclosed real estate deal and paid private school tuition of his grandnephew, who Thomas was raising as a son. Thomas reported neither transaction on his disclosure forms. Jesus. Put somebody through college. And didn't this dude also like buy like some property of one of the other ones? Or is this the exact same deal? It might be the same deal. The undisclosed gifts have prompted lawmakers to launch investigations and call for ethics reform. Recent bills would impose tighter rules for justices' recusals, require the Supreme Court to adopt a binding code of conduct, and create an ethics body which would investigate complaints. Neither a code nor an ethics office currently exists. Jesus. We wouldn't tolerate this from a city council member or an alderman. Dick Durbin said, an Illinois Democrat and chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said of Thomas in a recent hearing, and yet the Supreme Court won't even acknowledge it's a problem. So far, the court has chafed at the prospect of such reforms. though the court recently laid out its ethics practices in a statement signed by all 9 justices. Chief Justice John Roberts has not directly addressed the recent revelations. In fact, he has repeatedly suggested Congress might not have the power to regulate the court at all. Well, isn't that fun when you get to make up the rules as you go and interpret anything however you feel, and there's no real way to challenge that? Well, let's make it so you're not allowed to regulate us. We take good care of him because he makes all the rules. In the 1960s, in his first year of Harvard School, Singer was listening to a lecture by famed liberal professor when he later recalled he had an epiphany. Quote, "My goodness, they're making it up as they go along." It was a common sentiment among conservative lawyers who often accused liberal judges of activist overreach. While Singer's career as an attorney was short-lived, his convictions about the law stayed with him for decades. After starting a hedge fund that eventually made him one of the richest people in the country, he began directing huge sums to causes on the right. That included groups like the Federalist Society, dedicated to fostering the conservative legal movement and putting its followers on the bench. Yeah, like I said, we need to do a deep dive into the Federalist Society. In the last decade, Singer has contributed over $80 million to Republican political groups. He has also given millions to the Manhattan Institute, a conservative think tank, where he has served as chairman since 2008. The institute regularly files friend of the court briefs with the Supreme Court, at least 15 this term, including one asking the court to block student loan relief. The fact that we have friend of the court briefs, Jesus fucking Christ. Also, keep in mind, like, he came to the epiphany of, like, everything's getting made up as it goes. Like, yeah, that is kind of how law works, especially the interpretation of the law. Like, when they say, like, oh, it's a liberal thing. No, it's not. This is how interpretation works. You interpret it however you kind of feel to interpret. You know, you can make arguments for your interpretation, but it's all bullshit. It's all just whatever, frame of reference. And the argument for the Supreme Court has always been, and I've made this every time, Biden should expand it and make it ideologically difficult for conservatives to get what they want, not because I think the law is more liberal, but because if we have the option of setting the boundaries of what is acceptable, then it might as well be liberal then. Like, it's going to be one or the other, and I don't think the court is ever impartial. That's not a thing I believe in. I don't believe in the court's impartiality. So, no, this is a power thing when it comes down to it. This is raw politics. In the last decade, Singer has contributed, right, we read that. Singer's interest in the courts is more than ideological. His hedge fund, Elliott Management, is best known for making investments that promise handsome returns, but could require bruising legal battles. Singer has said he's drawn to positions where you, quote, control your own destiny, not just riding up and down with the wave of financial markets. That basically means breaking the law. That can mean pressuring corporate boards to fire a CEO, brawling with creditors over the remains of a bankruptcy company, and suing opponents. The fund now manages more than $50 billion. Okay, I'll just say it also. Hedge funds, abolish. Do it. I have no problem with it. Let's see. The fund now manages more than $50 billion in assets. The investments are extremely shrewdly litigious. Oh, no, shrewdly litigation driven. Sorry. A person familiar with Singer's fund told ProPublica that's why he's a billionaire. Singer's most famous gamble eventually made its way to the Supreme Court. In 2001, Argentina was in a devastating economic depression. Unemployment skyrocketed and deadly riots broke out in the street. The day after Christmas, the government finally went into default. For Singer, the crisis was an opportunity. As other investors fled, his fund purchased Argentine government debt at a steep discount. Within several years, as the Argentine economy recovered, most creditors settled with the government and accepted a fraction of what the debt was originally worth. But Singer's fund, an arm of Elliott called NML Capital, held out. Soon they were at war, a midtown Manhattan-based hedge fund trying to impose its will on a sovereign nation thousands of miles away. The fight played out on familiar turf for Singer, the U.S. courts. He launched an aggressive legal campaign to force Argentina to pay in full, and his personal involvement in the case attracted widespread media attention. Over 13 years of litigation and arguments spanned the rights foreign governments have in the U.S. and whether Argentina could pay off debts to others before Singer settled his claim. Sorry. If Singer succeeded, he stood to make a fortune. In 2007, for the first but not the last time, Singer's fund asked the Supreme Court to intervene. A lower court had stopped Singer and another fund from seizing Argentine central bank funds held in the U.S. The investors appealed, but that October, the Supreme Court declined to take up the case. On July 8th, the following year, Singer took Alito to Alaska on the private jet, according to emails, flight data from the Federal Aviation Administration, and people familiar with the trip. The group flew across the country to the town of King Salmon on the Alaska Peninsula, then returned to the East Coast 3 days later. In Alaska, they stayed at the King Salmon Lodge, a luxury fishing resort that drew celebrities, wealthy businessmen, and sports stars. On July 9th, one of the lodge's pilots flew Alito and other guests around 70 miles to the west to fish the Nushagak River? Nushagak? I don't know. Known for one of the best salmon runs in the world. Snapshots from the trip show Alito in waders and Indianapolis Grand Prix hat, smiling broadly as he holds his catch. Fucking piece of shit, man. Sam Alito is in the red jacket there, one lodge worker said, as he narrated the amateur video, The Justice in the Water. We take good care of him because he makes all the rules. Yep. Other guests of the trip included Leo, the Federalist Society leader, and a judge and Judge A. Raymond Randolph, a prominent conservative appellate judge for whom Leo had clerked according to fishing licenses and interviews with lodge staff. On another day, the group flew on one of the lodge's bush planes to a waterfall in Katmai National Park, where bears snatch salmon from the water with their teeth. At night, the lodge's chefs serve multi-course meals of Alaskan king crab legs or Kobe fillet. On the last evening, the member of Alito's group bragged that the wine they were drinking cost $1,000 a bottle. One of the lodge's fishing guides told ProPublica. In his op-ed, Alito described the lodge as a comfortable but rustic facility. Yeah, my ass. The justice said he does not remember if he was served wine, but it said it didn't cost $1,000 a bottle. Alito also pointed readers to the lodge's website. The lodge has been sold since 2008. And now a new downscale accommodation. The justice's stay was provided free of charge by another major donor of the conservative legal movement, Robin Arkley II, the owner of the mortgage. Fuck Christ, dude. Okay, let's be clear. These are the people who run this fucking country. Like, when conservatives do the whole, like, wealthy elite meme or whatever, they're saying Jews, right? Like, that's what they mean. They mean, like, Jews and I don't know, woke people, I guess. But like, this is who's actually doing it. These kinds of luxury trips for justices, this is insane. Free of charge, owner of a mortgage company, Arkley had recently acquired the fishing lodge, which catered to affluent tourists seeking a luxury experience in the Alaskan wilderness. A planning document prepared by lodge staff describes Alito as a guest of Arkley. Another guest on the trip told ProPublica the trip was a gift from Arkley, and the two lodge employees said they were told that Alito wasn't paying. Arkley, who does not appear to have been involved in any cases before the court, did not respond to detailed questions for the story. Sorry. Look at those lovely bears. Alito did not disclose the flight or the stay at the fishing lodge in his annual financial disclosures. A federal law passed after Watergate requires federal officials, including Supreme Court justices, to publicly report most gifts. The year before, Alito reported getting $500 of Italian food and wine from a friend, noting that his friend was unlikely to appear before the court. Wonder why you were okay with reporting it. The law has a personal hospitality exemption. If someone hosts a justice on their own property, free food, lodging, and entertainment doesn't always have to be disclosed, but the law clearly requires disclosure for gifts of private jet flights. According to 7 ethics law experts, and Alito appears to have violated it. The typical interpretation of the law required disclosure for his stay at the lodge too, experts said, since it was a commercial property rather than a vacation home. The judiciary's regulations did not make that explicit until they were updated earlier this year. Christ. Let's see. His op-ed pointed to language in the judiciary's filing. The exception only covers food, lodging, and entertainment. He's trying to move away from the plain language of the statute and the regulation. Well, duh. These guys, like, it's so funny because it's very obvious that all they do is whenever they want to do their like conservative meme law bullshit, they'll say plain reading, and then when they get caught with their hands in the cookie jar, then suddenly it's, then they want to interpret it their own fun, creative way every time. Year after that, in 2010, Alito delivered the keynote speech at the dinner for the donors of Manhattan Institute. Once again, Singer delivered a flattering introduction. He and his small band of like-minded justices are a critical and much appreciated bulwark for our freedom. And by our, he doesn't mean American people. He means literally his investors. Court cases and known interactions. Oh, geez. May of 2007, Singer's fund asked the court to intervene in the Argentine litigation. It declined later that year. 2008, Singer flies Alito on a private jet to Alaska. Well, look at that. When was that? In July of 2008. The next time they see each other is November of 2009. Singer introduced Alito at the Federalist Society dinner. And then Singer's Argentine dispute spurs 8 more Supreme Court appeals, 7 of which are turned down. Singer introduces Alito at Manhattan Institute again. And look at this. Court agrees to take on the Argentina case. Utility company asks the court to intervene. The bank asked the court to intervene, and Singer's battle on Argentina intensified as the hedge fund launched expansive public relations and lobbying campaign in 2012. The hedge fund, like, keep in mind, this is some fucking hedge fund, like, running the table on, like, another sovereign nation made up of millions of people. Alito articulated his own standard during his Senate confirmation process, writing that he believed in stepping away from the case when, quote, any possible question might arise. In his Wall Street Journal op-ed, Alito wrote of his failure to recuse himself from Singer's case to the court. It was and is my judgment that these facts would not cause a reasonable and unbiased person to doubt any ability. Yep. It is because I say it is. It's okay because I say it's okay. Jesus. Thank God for ProPublica, man. Thank God. So if you ever needed a reminder that the court is bullshit, and should not be respected as some impartial however we're treating it these days, let this be a reminder to you. These people get money the same way our normal politicians get money. It's just done in a slightly different way. You know the thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.